They told me monsters weren't real, but then again, they told me love was simple. Both turned out to be lies. I didn't mean to end up here, chained to secrets buried beneath America's perfect suburban lawns. Yet the moment I saw him half human, half something else, I realized my life would never belong to me again. Ethan Taylor was just a research intern. At least, that's what he kept reminding himself while scrubbing down sterile tables and filing reports no one would ever read. 21 years old, broke, and too stubborn to quit, he thought this government-funded internship might be the start of his real career in science. But the deeper he worked inside the lab, the more wrong it felt. No windows, no clocks, security that looked more like a prison than a research facility. And then there was room 7. He wasn't supposed to go in there, but of course he did. Curiosity had always been Ethan's greatest flaw. What he found wasn't equipment or files or some neat discovery to put on a resume. It was a person, or at least he looked like one. Aiden sat in the shadows of his glass cell, broad shoulders hunched, amber eyes glowing faintly under the flicker of overhead lights. He looked human enough until you noticed the scars, the claws that weren't quite claws, the way his breathing carried a low growl. For weeks Ethan pretended not to notice him, obeying the rules, following protocol. But Aiden noticed Ethan. And Aiden wasn't a thing you could ignore. The night the power failed, everything changed. Sirens wailed, doors unlocked, and in the chaos Ethan found himself trapped in the same section as Aiden. The lab sealed itself in emergency lockdown. No one was getting in. No one was getting out. Just Ethan and the creature everyone else called an experiment. At first, Ethan thought he was dead. The hybrid could have killed him in seconds, and maybe he should have. But Aiden didn't. Instead, he whispered the first words Ethan had ever heard from him. "Don't leave me alone." It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. Ethan didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. But against every shred of reason, he stayed. And that decision became the first of many that would rewrite his entire existence. The first night, they barely spoke. Ethan sat with his back against the cold steel wall, arms folded tight, listening to the hum of backup generators. Aiden sat opposite, watching him like he was both prey and salvation. "You're not afraid," Aiden finally said, his voice rough from disuse. Ethan snorted, too tired to be polite. "Of course I'm afraid. I'm just better at hiding it than you think." Aiden tilted his head, almost amused. "You don't smell like fear." That sentence alone nearly made Ethan bolt, but his pride kept him rooted. "Yeah, well, maybe you're broken. Or maybe I am." For the first time, Aiden smiled, and it wasn't monstrous at all. It was heartbreakingly human. As hours bled into days, Ethan learned the truth in fragments. Aiden wasn't some mindless weapon, though that's what the lab had wanted him to be. He had been created, spliced together with animal DNA, molded into something powerful and terrifying. But beneath all that, he longed for connection, for touch, for someone to look at him and not see a monster. Ethan swore he wouldn't fall for it. He swore he wouldn't get attached. But every time Aiden looked at him, every time he listened instead of lashing out, Ethan's resolve cracked. "You think I'm dangerous," Aiden said one night, voice low as they sat close enough for Ethan to feel his warmth. "I think you're lonely," Ethan replied, surprising even himself. Aiden's eyes softened. "You're not wrong. It should have been unbearable, two strangers locked away, one a human in turn, the other a hybrid born from nightmares. But instead, something fragile began to grow in that darkness. They shared stories, whispered fears, even laughter when the silence became too much. Ethan told him about late summers in small-town America, about fireworks and baseball games and the smell of cut grass. Aiden told him about the only things he remembered from outside: brief flashes of sky through a transport truck window, the taste of rain when he dared to open his mouth to the storm. And slowly, carefully, Ethan reached across the invisible wall between them. One night, his hand brushed Aiden's. It was reckless, stupid, but it felt like the first real choice he had ever made. Aiden's claws twitched, but he didn't pull away. He just closed his eyes and breathed in like it was the first time he had ever been touched. "You shouldn't," Ethan whispered. Neither should you, Aiden murmured back. But neither of them moved. The outside world might have seen them as a scientist and his experiment. But in that sealed lab, in the suffocating dark, they became something else entirely. Two souls stitched together by fear and longing, daring to want what the world told them they couldn't have. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes Aiden's instincts surged, and Ethan had to remind him he wasn't a weapon. Sometimes Ethan's fear spiked, and Aiden had to remind him he wasn't alone. But through it all, they kept reaching for each other. And for the first time in Ethan's life, love didn't feel simple. Felt dangerous, terrifying, worth everything. What Ethan didn't know, what neither of them could know, was that the lockdown wouldn't last forever. The world outside was waiting, with its cages and judgments, ready to tear them apart. But for now, in the secret dark of a forgotten lab, Ethan and Aiden allowed themselves to believe that maybe monsters were real, and maybe love was too. Ethan had always thought silence was supposed to be peaceful, but this silence wasn't. It pressed against him like a weight, the kind of silence that made every drop of water echo too loudly, every breath feel like it might shatter into something permanent. 2 weeks had passed. 2 weeks since the power outage, the sirens, the emergency lockdown that sealed them in together. No rescue team had come. No scientists, no guards, no other voices. Just him and Aiden. At first, Ethan had counted the hours on the wall with scratches. 1, 2, 3, 4. By day 3, he stopped. The scratches mocked him, proof of time slipping past without meaning. He had no way of knowing if anyone even remembered they were down here. You're staring again, Aiden's low voice rumbled. Ethan blinked, realizing his gaze had drifted across the room. At what? At me. Heat prickled across Ethan's face, and he looked away. Don't flatter yourself. Aiden chuckled softly, a sound that seemed wrong in this place, too alive. I wasn't. I don't think you look at me the way others do. I'm not used to it. Ethan pressed his lips together, not trusting himself to answer. Because Aiden was right. When he looked at him, it wasn't like watching a creature in a cage. It was like watching someone fighting not to drown. They survived on ration packs and water from backup tanks. Ethan rationed carefully, always dividing it evenly, though Aiden tried to give him more. You're smaller. You need it, Ethan argued one night, pushing half a protein bar into Aiden's hand. And you're fragile, Aiden countered, refusing. Not fragile. Ethan's tone was sharp, defensive. Aiden's amber eyes softened. Human, then? Ethan almost laughed. Almost. That's not exactly a compliment. Neither is monster, Aiden whispered. That silence again. The kind that bit deep. Ethan shifted closer, surprising himself. You're not a monster. Aiden stared at him, unblinking. You don't know that. Then prove me wrong. For a long moment they didn't speak. Aiden finally took the protein bar and ate in silence, slow and deliberate, as though the simple act of accepting food from Ethan was something sacred. At night, when the hum of the generators grew faint, Ethan sometimes woke to find Aiden sitting closer than before. Not touching, never touching, but near enough that Ethan could feel the heat radiating off him. The first time, Ethan nearly jumped. What are you doing? Aiden's reply was so soft Ethan almost missed it. Listening to your heartbeat. It's steady. Makes me feel less broken. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't push him away. Days blurred. Fear dulled into routine. But then the dreams started. Ethan dreamt of doors slamming open, guards flooding the room, dragging Aiden away in chains. He dreamt of being strapped to a table himself, needles piercing his skin, voices whispering he was next. And always, in those dreams, he reached for Aiden, but his hands never touched. Sometimes he woke up gasping, shaking, and sometimes he found Aiden watching him. You cry in your sleep? Aiden murmured once, not cruel, not pitying, just stating fact. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat raw. You talk in yours. What do I say? Ethan hesitated. My name, over and over. Something in Aiden's face broke then, and Ethan wished he hadn't said it. But before he could take it back, Aiden whispered, At least it's not screams. Ethan's chest ached. He wanted to reach for him to close the distance, but he didn't. Not yet. On the 15th day, the alarms blared again. Ethan jumped to his feet, heart hammering. What the hell? The metal door groaned, shifting slightly, before slamming shut again. A test. A glitch. Or maybe someone trying to get in. Aiden moved fast, stepping in front of Ethan, his claws half extended. The sight should have terrified him, but instead Ethan felt safe, protected. When the noise stopped, Aiden turned to him, chest heaving. "If they come back," he said, voice low and urgent. "Don't get between me and them." Ethan glared. "You think I'll just hide in a corner while they drag you off? You should. I won't." Aiden growled softly, frustration and something else woven into the sound. "You're reckless. Better than being heartless." Their eyes locked, tension sparking like static in the air. Ethan didn't flinch. For the first time, Aiden looked away first. That night, something shifted. They sat shoulder to shoulder, closer than ever before. Ethan could feel the warmth of Aiden's skin, hear the steady rhythm of his breathing. He wanted to move away, but he couldn't. Or maybe he didn't want to. "Do you hate them?" Ethan asked suddenly, his voice barely more than a whisper. "The scientists?" Aiden's tone was flat. "I don't think I know how to hate. Only hurt." Ethan's throat tightened. "I hate them." Aiden turned his head, studying him. "Because they locked you in here? Because they made you?" The silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Then slowly Aiden reached out. His hand hovered for a second, as though waiting for Ethan to pull away. When he didn't, Aiden's fingers brushed his wrist. Light, careful, shaking almost. It was the smallest touch, but it felt like everything. "Why?" Aiden whispered. "Because you don't deserve this," Ethan said, his voice breaking. Aiden's hand tightened, just slightly, as though anchoring himself, and Ethan let him. It became their ritual. Small touches, shared food, whispered words in the dark. Ethan told himself it wasn't dangerous, that it wasn't real. But the truth pulsed in every heartbeat was falling. Hard. And Aiden looked at him like he was the only light left in this hollow place. Sometimes Ethan caught him staring, and instead of looking away, Aiden would smile. A broken smile, soft and unsure. The kind of smile that said he didn't believe he deserved to feel this way, but he was grateful anyway. Ethan hated himself for wanting it, for craving it, but he couldn't stop. On the 20th day, something shattered. Aiden woke screaming, thrashing against the wall, claws tearing deep gouges into steel. His body convulsed, his amber eyes flashing wild. Ethan froze in terror, then moved anyway. He grabbed Aiden's arm, shouting his name. "Aiden! Look at me. It's me, it's Ethan." For a moment, Aiden didn't hear him, didn't see him. Then his gaze locked on Ethan's face, and slowly, painfully, the wildness faded. Aiden collapsed, shaking violently. Ethan caught him, pulling him close despite the danger, despite the claws still trembling inches from his throat. "I can't control it," Aiden gasped, his voice raw. "They made me too much. I'll hurt you." "You won't," Ethan said fiercely. "You won't because you don't want to. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you human." Aiden buried his face against Ethan's shoulder, breath ragged. "You don't understand. I'm not." Ethan tightened his hold. "You are. You are to me." And in that moment, neither of them cared about rules or cages or the world waiting outside. All that mattered was this. Ethan didn't let go. But outside, the lab wasn't silent anymore. Somewhere in the endless hallways, footsteps echoed. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan realized their time together wasn't endless. It was running out. The sound of footsteps didn't stop. At first, Ethan thought it was just his imagination, his fear finally spilling into hallucination. But Aiden's ears twitched, his whole body going rigid. That wasn't the kind of reaction you faked. "They're coming?" Aiden whispered, low and guttural. Ethan's pulse spiked. "Who? Guards? Scientists? Does it matter?" Aiden's gaze flicked toward the sealed door, then back at Ethan. If they open that, we run. Run. As if it were that simple. As if there was a place for them to go. Still, Ethan nodded. Because the alternative was worse, being dragged back into chains, needles, cages. Losing the fragile thread of connection they had built. He couldn't let that happen. Not now. The footsteps faded. Then silence. Too much silence. Ethan wanted to breathe relief, but Aiden didn't relax. His claws flexed against the floor, sharp enough to scrape metal. "They're watching," he muttered. "How do you know?" Aiden didn't answer. His amber eyes darted to the corners of the room, dark glass, faint red dots that could have been sensors. Ethan's stomach twisted. Of course. Cameras. They might have been alone physically, but someone could have been recording them this entire time. Ethan stood quickly, his chest burning with anger he hadn't realized was there. "We're rats in a maze," he spat. "They've been watching us survive. Maybe even waiting to see which one of us snaps first." Aiden looked up at him, unreadable. Then, quietly, "Then don't snap." It wasn't much, but it was enough to ground Ethan. His legs shook, but he sat down again, closer this time. So close his arm brushed Aiden's. He felt the warmth, the quiet tremor under his skin. "Promise me something," Ethan whispered. Aiden tilted his head. "What?" "That if they come. If they try to take Mayo, won't let them." The words came out more desperate than Ethan meant. He hated how his voice cracked at the end. Aiden's jaw tightened. "I don't want to hurt them." "I don't care," Ethan said fiercely. "I'd rather die in here than go back to being their test subject." For the first time, Aiden touched his face. A gentle brush of claws against his cheek, so careful Ethan's breath caught. "Then we die together." Ethan's eyes burned, tears he refused to shed. "You're supposed to say we'll live together." Aiden's smile was broken, aching. "I don't know how to promise that." They didn't sleep that night. They sat shoulder to shoulder, listening for footsteps that never came again. But in the stillness, something else bloomed between them, something heavier than survival, more fragile than fear. When Ethan finally dared to look at Aiden, he saw a question in his eyes. Not spoken, not forced, but hanging there between them. Ethan leaned in, just a breath closer. His heart thrashed wildly in his chest. He had kissed boys before, clumsy, harmless teenage moments in the backseats of cars, fumbling in the dark. But this was different. This was two people on the edge of the world, choosing each other when nothing else was left. And so he kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, barely more than a brush of lips. But Aiden inhaled sharply, like Ethan had given him oxygen after drowning. His hand came up, trembling, holding Ethan's jaw as though afraid he might disappear. When they pulled apart, neither spoke. They just breathed, foreheads pressed together, the world outside forgotten. But the world hadn't forgotten them. On the 23rd day, the sirens returned. Not a glitch, not a drill, a full system override. The steel doors groaned, gears unlocking. For the first time since the lockdown, light spilled in from the corridor. Harsh, white, blinding. Ethan's heart seized. Aiden stood instantly, pulling Ethan behind him. Shadows moved in the hallway, figures armed, advancing. "Stay back," Aiden growled, his voice not human anymore. His claws extended fully, his body braced for a fight. "Wait," Ethan hissed, clinging to his arm. "They'll kill you." "Not before I kill them." "No," Ethan's voice cracked. "That's what they want. To prove you're nothing but a weapon." Aiden froze. His eyes flicked to Ethan, searching, desperate. For a moment, the chaos faded, and all that remained was the bond between them. "Then what do we do?" Aiden whispered. Ethan didn't know, but he knew one thing: they couldn't go back. He grabbed the backpack he'd been quietly packing for days, ration bars, water bottles, stolen lab keys. "We run." The soldiers poured in. Guns raised. Commands barked. And Aiden did what Ethan asked. He grabbed his hand and they ran. The lab wasn't endless, though it felt like it. Corridor after corridor, each one the same metal walls, flickering lights, locked doors. Ethan fumbled with stolen keycards, swiping desperately until one beeped green. "In here!" he shouted, pulling Aiden through. They stumbled into a storage room. Rows of shelves, crates, supplies. Aiden slammed the door behind them, claws carving grooves into the metal as he dragged a cabinet across it. The pounding started immediately, soldiers shouting, guns banging against steel. But for now it held. Ethan collapsed against the wall, panting. "We can't keep this up forever." Aiden crouched in front of him, his amber eyes glowing in the dark. "Then we find a way out." "There is no way out." Ethan's voice shook. "This place's buried underground." Where Aiden cut him off, gripping his hand. "Ethan, look at me." He did. "I was born here," Aiden said, "but I've always felt a pull, like the world outside is still waiting for me. For us, we just have to survive long enough to find it." Ethan wanted to believe him. God, he wanted to. The pounding grew louder. The cabinet rattled. Aiden leaned closer, pressing his forehead to Ethan's again. "If this is the end, I don't regret it." Ethan's throat burned. He wanted to scream, to beg, to fight. Instead, he kissed him again, harder this time, because words weren't enough. And for a fleeting moment, in the heart of the storm, they were infinite. The cabinet buckled. The door screeched. Soldiers forced their way through. Ethan grabbed Aiden's hand. Now or never. They tore through the opposite exit, deeper into the labyrinth. Bullets ricocheted off steel. Shouts echoed. But together they didn't stop. Somewhere ahead, a faint draft whispered against Ethan's skin. Real air. Aiden snarled, baring his teeth in something wild and victorious. There. And for the first time, hope tasted real. Hope had a sound. It was the rush of air, the sudden chill against Ethan's sweat-soaked face as he and Aiden burst through a final steel door. Hope had a taste, sharp and raw, the tang of dirt and pine needles when Ethan fell to his knees in the forest above ground. And hope had a face Aiden's when he turned toward the rising sun for the very first time. The lab was behind them now, buried, dying. Shouts still echoed below, but they grew fainter with every step Ethan and Aiden took into the trees. The soldiers wouldn't give up so easily. But for this moment, for this fragile breath of dawn, they were free. Ethan leaned heavily against a tree, chest heaving. "We made it." Aiden crouched beside him, eyes wide, amber irises catching the light like fire. His claws dug into the dirt, trembling. This is real." Ethan reached out, his hand covering Aiden's. "It's real." For a moment, Aiden closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, the wind threading through his dark hair, rustling leaves above them. He looked like a man relearning what it meant to exist. And Ethan, battered and breathless, realized he would do anything to protect this. But freedom was fragile. They couldn't stay here. The lab's reach stretched far, and Ethan knew they would hunt Aiden. Hunt them. "We need to keep moving," Ethan said softly. Aiden's gaze lingered on the sky, but he nodded. "Where?" "Anywhere they're not." Aiden tilted his head, studying him. "You'd really leave everything behind for me?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "What's left to leave? Family that never calls? Friends who wouldn't believe me? A career built on a lie? You're all I have now, Aiden." The hybrid's expression flickered, a mix of awe and sorrow. "Then I'll protect you. Always." Ethan didn't argue. He just squeezed his hand tighter. They traveled through the forest as the sun climbed higher. Every step felt borrowed safety, borrowed time. Ethan's body ached, his mind frayed, but Aiden never slowed. He carried Ethan's backpack effortlessly, his senses sharp, every sound and shift of the wind feeding into his instincts. Once they stumbled upon a stream. Ethan knelt instantly, splashing water onto his face, drinking greedily. Aiden hovered nearby, watching with something close to wonder. "Go ahead," Ethan urged. "It's safe." Aiden crouched down, cupping water in his hands. When he drank, his throat worked in long, desperate swallows, as if the taste itself was salvation. He pulled back suddenly, blinking. "It's cold." Ethan smiled despite everything. That's what water's supposed to be. Aiden dipped his hands again, this time slower, savoring it. Then he looked at Ethan, his expression unguarded, childlike. Thank you. Ethan's heart twisted. Don't thank me. Thank the world. It was always yours, even if they tried to keep it from you. By nightfall, exhaustion forced them to stop. They found shelter beneath a rocky overhang, hidden among trees. Ethan collapsed against the stone, shivering in the chill air. Aiden sat close, his warmth steady. You're cold. Ethan tried to laugh it off. That's what happens outside. Temperatures change. Aiden frowned, then wrapped an arm around him. At first, Ethan stiffened, but the heat seeped in too quickly, too desperately. He leaned against Aiden's chest, letting himself be held. I don't deserve this, Aiden whispered, his voice rumbling in the dark. Ethan tilted his head up. Don't deserve what? You. Freedom. Any of it. I was made to destroy, not to. He trailed off, his jaw tight. Ethan reached up, his fingers brushing Aiden's jaw. You were made, yeah, but you've chosen everything since. And that makes you more human than anyone who locked you up. For a long moment, Aiden didn't move. Then he pressed his forehead to Ethan's. You make me believe that, even when I don't. And there, in the quiet forest, they kissed again, not in desperation this time, but in promise. The days that followed blurred into a fragile rhythm. Traveling by night, resting by day. Sharing food, stories, silence. Ethan taught Aiden how to walk without drawing attention, how to cover tracks, how to blend in. Aiden taught Ethan how to listen, really listen to the world around them. The rustle of prey in the underbrush. The difference between safe silence and dangerous silence. The scent of rain before it fell. Each lesson stitched them closer. Each hardship bound them tighter. But the shadow of the lab never left. One night, as they camped near an abandoned cabin, Ethan saw it, drones in the sky, faint red lights sweeping the trees. He pulled Aiden inside, heart pounding. They're still looking, Ethan whispered. They won't stop, Aiden said grimly. Fear knifed through Ethan. Then how do we outrun them? We don't. Aiden's eyes glowed faintly in the dark. We outlive them. It wasn't just survival. It was defiance. The final test came 3 weeks later. They had reached the edge of a small town. Ethan's heart clenched at the sight of it, houses with porches, kids' bikes left on lawns, the smell of fresh bread drifting from a bakery. Aiden stood beside him, frozen, as though unsure if it was real. But before they could step forward, headlights cut through the dark. Black vans, military insignias. The lab hadn't given up. Panic surged. Ethan grabbed Aiden's hand. Run! They darted back into the woods, but soldiers were faster this time, coordinated. Shots rang out. Bark splintered from trees around them. Ethan stumbled. Pain seared his leg. He hit the ground hard. Ethan! Aiden's roar tore through the night. He whirled, claws flashing, fury incarnate. Soldiers faltered, some retreating but more pushed forward. No! Ethan shouted, clutching his bleeding leg. Don't give them what they want. Aiden's chest heaved, torn between rage and reason. Then his gaze locked on Ethan's, and slowly, painfully, he retracted his claws. Instead of slaughter, he chose something harder: restraint. He lifted Ethan effortlessly, holding him against his chest. I've got you. Bullets chased them. Shouts thundered. But somehow, impossibly, they reached the river. Aiden didn't hesitate. He leapt, plunging them both into the icy current. The world spun. Water roared. Ethan clung to him, lungs burning, until finally miraculously broke the surface downstream. Coughing, shivering, alive. Aiden dragged them onto the bank, collapsing beside him. His chest heaved, his body shaking. I almost lost you. Ethan grabbed his face, forcing him to meet his gaze. You didn't. You won't. And then he kissed him, even with blood on his lips, even with the world closing in, because nothing else mattered. Weeks later, they found safety in the unlikeliest place. A woman who ran a quiet farmhouse on the outskirts of town took them in. She didn't ask questions she didn't want answered. She gave them food, warmth, a place to rest. For the first time, Ethan slept without fear. And for the first time, Aiden laughed a small, unsteady sound, but real. They weren't safe forever. They both knew it. The world was cruel, and their love would always be tested. But they had something no lab, no soldier, no chain could break. They had chosen each other. On a quiet morning, Ethan stood on the farmhouse porch, watching the sunrise. Aiden came up behind him, wrapping his arms around his waist. Ethan leaned back into him, smiling softly. "What are you thinking?" Aiden murmured. Ethan exhaled slowly. That maybe monsters aren't real after all. Just people who were never given a chance to be loved. Aiden pressed his face into Ethan's shoulder, his voice low and rough. "Then what does that make me?" Ethan turned, cupping his face, kissing him gently. "It makes you mine." And with the dawn spilling over them, they let themselves believe in tomorrow, in love, in a life that was finally their own. Because sometimes the scariest monsters weren't in labs or cages. Sometimes they were in the lies people told about what was human, what was worthy of love. And Ethan and Aiden had proven them all wrong. The world still waited. The fight wasn't over. But as long as they had each other, they weren't afraid. Because love wasn't simple. It was dangerous, terrifying, and worth everything. And in the end, it was enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.